When it comes to allegations of a child sex crime, no one, especially law enforcement, wants to risk letting the guilty walk free.
He said that Michael's a pedophile and that he's dangerous.
My lawyer came up to me and was saying they're going to serve both y'all 40 years, the max.
But what happens when accusations point to family?
I was in shock. It's like somebody hit you with a damn baseball bat.
My heart dropped. I mean, that's my cousin.
Did your cousins molest you? But you're saying you're innocent.
I'm saying I did not do this crime.
I wonder how these two brothers, who both claim their innocence, were convicted of the same sex crime. Witness after witness testifying. And Michael, they're saying some pretty disturbing things about you.
I'm finally starting to see that my life is about to be over.
Is this a case of innocence lost or innocence denied?
You're guilty to proven innocent. You're not innocent to proven guilty.
You're left asking the question, what on earth happened here? Was justice served?
I'm Tony Harris. In my 30 years as an investigative reporter, I've learned that every crime reveals a world of trouble. A family, a neighborhood, an entire town changed forever. Come with me to the scene of the crime. Parker Heights, a quiet town nestled deep in central Texas. A place celebrated for its independence and freedom to roam. In October 1999, two teenage brothers, John and Michael Arena, lost that freedom when they were convicted of a horrific sexual assault on their young cousins. It would send them to prison for years and forever brand them as deviant criminals for a crime they say they didn't commit.
That's when they were babies. You could tell Mikey, look, Mikey had kind of like the square head. John was the little pudgy one right there, you know.
Right. How close in age are they?
A year and a day apart. John liked bikes. Mikey was more the sports nut, and he was actually good at it, especially football.
Robert Arena raised his sons, John and Michael, right here in what he calls Arenaville, a modest suburban neighborhood where he and his wife, Betty, lived within shouting distance of his brother Stephen, his wife, LaVonna, and their two kids, Stephanie and Austin.
Steffi and Austin were always tight-knit with the family here. My brother lived up there, I lived there, and a few houses down was Grandma and Grandpa. We all lived together. We take care of each other. We had a good life. We weren't rich, we weren't poor. I made sure they had clothes on their back, a roof over their head. But then the bottom fell out.
The bottom fell out.
In May 1997, Stephen and his wife, LaVonna, are in the midst of a nasty divorce when LaVonna suddenly skips town with their children, Stephanie and Austin, 7 and 5 years old. A year and a half go by before Stephen tracks them down in Iowa. When he does, LaVonna makes a horrifying accusation. She claims she fled with the children because they were being molested by their cousins, John and Michael, who were 15 and 14 at the time.
Your brother comes to you and says, John and Mike have molested my kids.
Mm-hmm.
How'd that hit you?
Well, how would it hit you? It hits you like somebody hit you with a damn baseball bat.
Did you get a sense that your brother actually believed the allegations?
At the beginning, yeah. at the beginning.
But months pass, and the accusations seem to vanish into thin air.
At the time, I didn't hear anything from Steve again about anything. Like it was just like it was blown over, you know?
Then in April 1999, out of the blue, Robert receives a letter from the Harker Heights Police Department.
Just come down. We need to talk to you. That's it.
And you don't make the connection to the allegations.
No, I don't. Not at that time, I didn't.
Assuming it's a misunderstanding, Robert and Betty agree to take John and Michael in for questioning.
If you didn't do anything wrong, what's to worry about?
Detective Erica Jordan meets the boys and their father at the entrance to the station and demands to speak with John first, alone.
So she grabs John, and I'm right by the door wanting to go in. She grabs him, slams the door on me, and locks it, and wouldn't let me in. Next thing was 2 or 3 hours there, interrogating him.
Did you think I better stop this right now?
I tried to, couldn't do it. You got to remember, they did not let me in. The door was shut.
John Arena is just 17 years old when he is questioned by Detective Jordan. She lays out the accusations against him. That he and his brother sexually abused Stephanie and Austin 2 years ago, when they still lived in the neighborhood. John is 35 years old now, but he remembers parts of his conversation with Detective Jordan like it was yesterday.
What was the allegation?
She was telling me about how Stephanie said that, I'm not gonna say rape, because it wasn't, the word rape never came out, but that we had sex, that I stuck my penis in her vagina, that I put it in her mouth.
You remember your reaction?
Shocked. Confused.
But you're saying you're innocent.
I'm saying I did not do this crime.
John says Detective Jordan hands him a piece of paper and orders him to start writing.
She was wanting me to say something. She wanted information from me of what happened. So my mind started thinking, how can I get out of here? Because I don't like the situation I'm at. I don't like it.
And you weren't being allowed to leave?
No.
You didn't feel you could leave?
She told me that I couldn't leave. I asked her if I can go talk to my parents numerous times.
You were told no?
Yeah. At 17, with no lawyer or no parent in the office with me.
There's no videotape and no witnesses to show what went down that day. Only John's memory of confusion and panic.
So now I know that I was just thinking, what do I got to put on this piece of paper so that I can leave?
After hours behind closed doors, John has done the unthinkable. Confessed to a crime he swears he didn't commit.
Brother, let me read something to you. This is a nightmare for you. This is my statement. I have had oral sex with Steph, I think 3 or 4 times. You hear these words back, what do you think? What's your reaction?
I was stupid.
When you crafted this, did you have any idea of the jeopardy you were putting yourself in?
Oh, no. Never once was I thinking of the consequences.
The police station where John was interrogated is long gone. Vanished. Along with any evidence that could help me understand why John basically backed himself into a jail cell.
So this is pretty amazing. This is the confession. It's a handwritten confession from John Arena. Pretty stark stuff. Then the detective types up a second confession with even more details. And he signs this one as well. 2 signed confessions from John Arena.
There's only one other person who knows exactly what happened at the police station that day. The detective who questioned him for hours, Erica Jordan.
Hi, Erica. Erica, how are you? It's Tony Harris. Can I just at least make my argument for sitting down with me? Erica, don't hang up, Erica. Okay. Erica? She says she's not in law enforcement anymore. She's proud of what she did in law enforcement. She says the case has been adjudicated, and she doesn't want to talk about it anymore.
John isn't the only one being charged for something he says he didn't do. His brother is also caught in a legal trap. When an expert witness testifies that 16-year-old Michael is a pedophile. After he's interrogated over accusations he molested his 2 young cousins, 17-year-old John Arena signs a police statement. But he claims he was pressured to confess to something he didn't do. And it's not just John who's caught in this nightmare. His 16-year-old brother, Michael, is also accused. Michael is equally stunned by the charges, which seem to come out of nowhere.
My dad's famous saying was, you know, we're good people. If you did nothing wrong, the cops will be on our side. Justice will be on our side.
How would you describe your relationship in those early years with Austin and Stephanie, your cousins?
They were like my little brother and sister. They would come over, I'd let them play my games because they loved Mortal Kombat. I looked out for them in whatever I could.
Michael adamantly denies abusing his cousins to Detective Jordan. But both boys are ordered to appear in court.
When do you learn that your brother has entered into a statement where he has confessed?
I didn't know until he was going up for trial. And they were offering us a deal.
Whoa! Are you telling me that you didn't know he confessed as you were meeting with your attorney?
Nobody really talked. My family really didn't talk about nothing. The lawyers didn't talk about nothing. It was just like that fast, though.
Right. Let me read you. This is the statement from your brother. Have you ever read this?
No.
Take a moment.
What the hell was he thinking?
You understand that if John doesn't offer this statement and sign it, there's really no case.
With his confession, John's fate is all but sealed. But Michael still has a chance to walk free. About to appear in court, John attempts to salvage the situation as best he can.
And that's when I was like, how can I fix this? Obviously, this is my fault. We're in this spot. How can I make this better? My lawyer came up to me and was saying, if you take a plea, they'll drop the charges on your brother. Just one of y'all will go. If not, they're gonna serve both y'all 40 years, the max.
Wow.
And that's your whole life. No school, never gonna get married, none of that, no.
Facing the possibility of 4 decades in prison, John says he has less than an hour to make a decision. He takes the plea deal. 7 years behind bars in exchange for what he believes will be his brother's freedom.
Did you discuss it with your parents?
It was one of those deals where you need to hurry up and do it.
That's ridiculous pressure.
On October 6th, 1999, at the age of 17, John Arena pleads guilty to 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault of a child. The detective who interrogated John won't speak with me, but there is someone who helped put these boys away who is willing to talk. The prosecutor who built the case against the Arena brothers and orchestrated the plea deal, Tom Sigmund.
John says he felt under pressure. He wanted it to end. And that's why he wrote the statement, signed it. How do you respond to that?
Not only did he give a very descriptive confession, but he could have gone to trial to try to raise that this was a forced or some type of coerced confession. Not only that, he pled guilty to Judge Johnson and accepted the deal we offered him. He could have had his day in court.
John says to me, the reason I did this was to save my brother.
Right.
That I was offered an agreement.
Mm-hmm. I was the prosecutor who handled all plea negotiations, and I will tell you that is categorically false. That is made up out of whole cloth.
The plea deal negotiations were never recorded, so it's a case of he said, he said. But where does that leave Michael?
John said to me, I thought by doing this, I'm protecting my little brother. I'm going to take the fall.
The fall for what? There was nothing done. I mean, that makes me mad. I don't know why he needed to protect me. Protecting me would have been talking to me in the first place. Protecting me would have been like, Mike, this is what's going on. Because I didn't know half that was going on.
I can't believe how little this family actually talked to each other. If my kids were in this situation, if your kids were in this situation, you would hold a family meeting. You would strategize how to move forward, right? I gotta tell you, for a close-knit family, there was an astonishing lack of communication.
10 days after John Arena is sentenced to prison, 16-year-old Michael is ordered to stand trial.
This is where it happened, huh?
This is the place.
What do you remember? You were a young kid.
I remember standing in front of those 2 doors, waiting for mom and dad, go in there, and it started the process of the end of my childhood.
Michael hasn't admitted to the crime, but without his knowledge, he has already given prosecutors exactly what they need to send him to prison. It happened a few weeks earlier when he submitted to a psychological test called the ABLE assessment.
They put me in front of this computer screen, and it had like those old, like, individual picture things that you put and it like snaps to each one.
Yeah.
There were pictures of grown men, grown women, kids, and they were dressed in like bathing suits, kids tied up, kids holding ropes. Each time I'm like, what is this, you know?
And what you didn't realize is that those images were building a case for you as a pedophile.
Right.
Armed with those test results, the prosecution calls Dr. Fred Willoughby, the psychologist who administered the test. He tells the jury that Michael is a pedophile with a high risk to reoffend. But the most damning testimony comes from Stephanie Arena, Michael's cousin. In a series of yes or no answers to the prosecutor's questions, Stephanie agrees that Michael did molest her.
My heart dropped. I mean, that's my cousin. You know, like, why are me and my brother being pinpointed for this? And that, I'm like, how can they honestly sit there and put these children up here and put this stuff in their head? They're kids. They should be playing. They should be, you know, thinking the world is rainbows and unicorns.
But Michael, you get an opportunity at a defense.
Not really. Honestly, not really. I went on the stand and...
You went on the stand?
Yeah, I went on the stand for like a few minutes and I looked at the jury and I was like, no, I didn't do it. And he's like, okay, that's all I have.
After just 3 days in court, Michael Arena is found guilty and sentenced to 20 years in prison.
Michael, you hadn't been alive for 20 years at that point.
No.
And here you are being sentenced to 20 years. Could you wrap your mind around that?
I know it's like this. You're guilty to proven innocent. You're not innocent to proven guilty.
On some level, Michael has to be thinking, my brother signs the confessions. He got 7 years. I maintain my innocence throughout.
And still get more time than him.
Does he blame you for his situation?
I hope not.
For John and Michael's father, Robert Arena, the trial shatters his faith in the justice system.
What happened to your two boys here?
They got railroaded, come on. I'm just a poor white guy. A dumb white guy. Lost my kids' childhood.
And you feel responsible. Why?
Should have been smarter.
What would you have done differently?
Gotten a lawyer. Gotten a lawyer right away, I guess. I didn't think I needed one. I just like, you know.
John and Michael Arena are both headed to prison. But the Arenas don't give up on their sons. They're gearing up for a long legal fight when a key witness surprises everyone with new testimony. It's 1999, and John and Michael Arena, both teenagers, have been hauled off to prison for sexually abusing their young cousins. A crime they say they didn't commit. Now their parents, Robert and Betty, are determined to fight back. They find an ally in Loretta Matthews, a legal advocate who agrees to help with their son's cases.
This is from 99 on. History, everything that we have. Evidence, documents, court testimonies.
If you want the totality of this case, if you want to understand it top to bottom, inside out, I mean, it's not just what's here, it's here, it's here.
It's all in here.
It's here.
And in here.
Right. And you come to what conclusions pretty early on here?
John and Michael are innocent.
Right from the start, Loretta zeroes in on Stephanie and Austin's mother, LaVonna Arena.
We have, instead of 2 victims, we have 4. Stephanie, Austin, Michael, and John. And the perpetrator is LaVonna Arena. She's the one that made this whole ball start rolling.
It all started back in 1997 when LaVonna left town with the kids during her custody battle with Stephen Arena.
We believe that she felt that she was going to lose custody. She has a pattern. She gets nervous about losing her children or going through a divorce. She makes allegations.
In fact, Loretta discovers that LaVonna had accused a previous husband of molesting another daughter 4 years earlier, when they were splitting up.
Then when Stephen Arena and her were going through their divorce, she did the same thing, but she accused cousins because Betty and Robert was going to testify against her in their divorce court.
This theory would supply a motive for framing John and Michael. But it doesn't tell me why her 2 children lied.
If the brothers never touched them, then why did Stephanie and Austin say they did?
Stephanie declined to speak. But Austin, now 25 years old, has agreed to meet with me.
Austin, how would you describe your childhood?
The times when I actually got to enjoy my childhood, they were great. They were.
Tell me about those days.
Days I would go over and visit my cousins. Like I would play Mike's Super Nintendo. Those days were awesome.
Right. What happened to your life at 5 years old?
One day I wake up, the house is empty. And my mother's got all kinds of things packed up for us. And, she takes us in the car and we just start driving.
In the years before your mom packed you all up and you left, did your cousins molest you?
No.
Do you remember the first moment it was suggested to you that someone had touched you inappropriately?
I remember sitting next to my mother on the couch, and she had this very serious look on her face. But she had this kind of motherly tone in her voice, like, "Oh, sweetie, do you remember when John put his wee-wee in your butt?" She would say things like that.
The next thing he knows, 7-year-old Austin is being shipped back to Texas with his sister to testify against Michael Arena in front of a packed courtroom.
It was very intimidating and very confusing. And I remember seeing the hurt in his eyes.
But you were aware that you were saying things that in fact hadn't happened.
The way my mother put it, it almost felt as if they did happen. When someone who you hold in such high regard tells you something happens, you basically start to believe it happened.
Even so, Austin's testimony is so vague and inconclusive that it's thrown out of court. But Stephanie's account is enough to put Michael away.
When you realize that you had a hand in putting someone through hell, basically, it's one of the worst feelings you can actually feel, besides being in that situation yourself.
Right. You were a child. These were suggestions of what happened, put into your mind by
My mother. Someone that you hold with such high regard telling you to do these things to other people you hold that you love. It's awful.
LaVonna was never ordered to appear in court during Michael's trial. But a few years afterwards, a reporter from 2020 managed to catch up with her in Iowa. Here she tries to defend the fact that there was no medical proof the children were molested.
It's possible that there are tissues, whatever.
In 2000, an Iowa divorce court decides LaVonna is not credible and is unfit to care for her children. The judge grants full custody to Stephen Arena, and they return to Harker Heights to live with their father. Once home, Stephanie tells her father that she and Austin had lied in court about the abuse.
what does her dad do with this information?
He immediately calls me. He says, we need to know what we need to do. And I went over and talked to him. When I asked Stephanie why she did it, she says, well, my mom told me she would go to jail if I didn't say these things about Michael and John.
The idea of recanting doesn't come out of thin air. Were you persuaded to recant your testimony?
No.
Loretta?
No. Loretta just wanted to find out the truth from me. Whether my cousins had molested me or whether they hadn't.
In 2001, 2 years after John and Michael were convicted, Austin and Stephanie, now 9 and 11 years old, go to court to recant. But to everyone's surprise, when Stephanie tells Judge Edward Johnson the abuse never occurred, he threatens to charge her with perjury. Stephanie stands her ground and recants anyway.
Stephanie would tell you today she was threatened by the judge, Judge Johnson, and she stood by that recantation.
Right.
Is that compelling in any way to you?
Her recantation came about after she was interviewed by a lady named Loretta Matthews. I thought that Miss Matthews' influence over her was highly dubious.
You didn't believe it?
Not at all. One other reason I didn't believe the recantation is that Stephanie said nothing ever happened to her, ever. And we still have that confession from John Arena.
Because John confessed.
Correct.
And he wouldn't have confessed to something as serious as this unless he actually did it.
That was my opinion, yes, sir.
The court refuses to grant a new trial. The Arenas are right back where they started, until a new piece of false testimony comes to light and gives Michael another chance at freedom. By 2001, John and Michael Arena have been behind bars for 2 years. The brothers are kept separate and left to fend for themselves.
How did you navigate this? How did you cope?
I stood my ground. I mean, nobody knew I was there. I made up some fabricated story. A lot of fights, a lot of craziness. I mean, in that world, anything could have happened.
Stuck in prison, Michael and John can do nothing but survive and wait. Then suddenly, Loretta Matthews makes another critical breakthrough in the case. It turns out Dr. Fred Willoughby, the psychologist who labeled Michael a pedophile, grossly misrepresented the accuracy rate of the test. Even worse, it was never designed to be used on teenagers.
The ABEL test
Is junk science. Michael was not old enough to be diagnosed as a pedophile.
In his final arguments to the jury, the prosecutor had leaned heavily on Willoughby's analysis.
And you know now he's been classified as a pedophile by an expert. You know that he is interested in children in the same age group as little Stephanie Arena. Think about her. Think about that.
And in your mind, that was pivotal testimony.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If I was a jury member and I was sitting there and I heard this testimony and not knowing who Dr. Willoughby was, I would say, oh, my God, we need to give him a big sentence.
Once again, Michael's family returns to court. But despite this powerful new information, their efforts go nowhere once more. By 2005, the Arena brothers have been in prison for 5 years. That summer, John's time is up, and he is released on parole.
I bag up my stuff and I walk out the golden gates. They are shiny. They are shiny. And it finally kind of hits you. You're free, on parole. Brother's still locked up, serving 20. I got to see him before I made parole. It had been 5 years since I'd seen him. I could tell he changed. Wasn't the same brother as was when we first, got locked up.
Michael's case is at a dead end in the courts. But after John's release, one lawyer decides to take the case pro bono. Dallas defense attorney Clint Broden.
Unfortunately, this sort of thing happens a lot in our criminal justice system.
It happens a lot.
People want to believe children, except children are easily manipulated. And so the fact of the matter is, sexually assaulting a child is probably the most likely crime you could be falsely accused of.
Did Michael get a fair trial?
Oh, absolutely not. Not even close.
It takes Clint Broden 6 long years before he manages to get Michael Arena's case all the way to the Texas Supreme Court.
Here's what MPA was convicted on. Question, did MPA make you put your mouth on his private parts? I think so, says this 8-year-old essay. You think so? Yeah, I can't remember. But this is an innocent man who has spent 40% of his life in prison over this testimony I just read to you. This man's innocent.
Finally, after 12 years of battling the courts, Michael is offered a victory of sorts. The state agrees to overturn his sentence and leave him off the sex offender registry. But it refuses to overturn the conviction, since there is no actual proof of innocence. On June 1st, 2012, after serving nearly 13 years, Michael Arena is suddenly and without warning set free.
I'm asleep. The property officer comes up to me, knocks on my bunk. Arena, get up, you're leaving. I wake up, I'm like, what? I was like, is this a game? Is this a trick? And then I find out that they're letting me out on time served.
For Michael, his freedom is bittersweet. Just 1 year earlier, his beloved mother, Betty, died of cancer. And he never got a chance to say goodbye.
That's the only reason I cry. I don't cry about nothing else. That's the one thing that breaks me every time. She was my best friend. Always there for me. And I live in a world where I feel like no one is there for me. My brother is off doing his thing. I'm trying to figure out mine and get my life together. So there's really not a strong family unit anymore.
12 years of prison. How are you now? How's your life now?
Constant struggle. Finding a job is like non-existent. At one point, I put in like over 100 applications online, went to places, never heard anything back. I'm out. I'm free, but I'm not. Life out here is just another prison.
So you go from being institutionalized to being shot out of a cannon and expected to pick up with a life you've never known.
And with a family that I haven't really hung out with for over a decade. So I'm supposed to know who these people are that I haven't really seen in years.
How would you describe your relationship with your brother today?
He's family. It's changed. It's not the same. We don't talk, really. We don't see each other. We don't hang out. It's not perfect. It's not great.
While John and Michael may not always see eye to eye, they're united in one mission: to clear their names. And with a powerful new ally on their side, they may have one last chance. John Arena has been out of prison since 2005, but he is still paying for the one big mistake he made as a teenager, confessing to a crime he didn't commit. Unlike his brother, Michael, John is publicly listed on the sex offender registry.
How would you describe your life now?
Struggle. I work paycheck to paycheck. I can't just up and move. You don't travel. You don't get to go see things as much as other people do. The one holiday that everybody loves, Halloween. Not this guy. Matter of fact, no Christmas decorations, no Halloween decorations, no nothing. No form of, how do you say, influencing children to approach my house. I sit in my house and wait till it's over, till it's safe to come out.
John wants his life back, and with the help of the Innocence Project of Texas, an organization dedicated to fighting wrongful convictions, he is trying to clear his name. Lawyer Tony Houghton says there is one almost surefire way to overturn his conviction:
There's a recognition that if Mom told the truth, that would be new evidence. And that would be stuff that the prosecution and the courts would have, I believe, a great deal of difficulty denying or not believing.
I need you to be honest with me on this one. Even with LaVonna coming forward, on a percentage basis, what are the chances of getting John and Michael's conviction overturned?
I think if LaVonna comes forward and tells the truth, we're probably over 85, close to 90% chance of getting the conviction overturned.
You think so?
Yeah, that's right.
To date, LaVonna has never withdrawn her accusation that John and Michael molested her children.
You haven't spoken to your mother in 3 years?
No. I don't know how to be family to someone who doesn't know the meaning of the word, I guess. Until my cousins can have their lives back, there's always going to be a dark cloud hanging over my head when it comes to her.
Austin feels guilt to this day. He feels in part responsible for what's happened to your life.
I don't blame him. I don't blame Stephanie. It wasn't their fault.
Who do you blame?
LaVonna. LaVonna in the court. LaVonna for even remotely orchestrating this whole thing, and the courts for taking 2 kids and throwing them under the bus.
With prison now behind them, both Michael and John are back in touch with their cousins.
What are your feelings about Stephanie and Austin today?
I love them. They're my family. I go see them. Stephanie's married, and Austin, hell of a guy. I support them both. It's not an easy road of being a so-called victim.
As for Robert and his brother Stephen, they're having a harder time mending fences.
How would you describe what this whole ordeal has done to the relationship with your brother?
It'll take a lot of time to heal. I'm hoping one of these days they'll bring my whole family back together. It's like a rubber band. It's stretched. It's not broke, but it's stretched.
It pains Robert to know that John and Michael, once so close, are now virtual strangers. But my time with the Arenas has shown me they're working hard to rebuild those broken bonds and create a new future for the one that was lost.
And I ain't never gonna quit fighting this. No, no way. That's the only thing I want out of this whole thing is, before I close my eyes, my kids' name are cleared.